So I founded Startup Weekend. Has anybody been to Startup Weekend?
Yeah.
So
nice.
162 countries that grew to. There's this idea of like, these networking events are fun, but we don't actually know what we're doing. Like, I think you're a good marketer and you think I'm a good community guy, but like, let's actually build something. And it might be a silly project, but let's spend 72 hours or 54 hours from meeting as strangers to trying to launch a company. So it's generally a lot of people's first touch to entrepreneurship. I was first employee of Techstars, which is a global accelerator, and then I own a coffee shop in Boulder, Colorado. So a little bit like I feel like every tech person I've ever met has like some sort of like taco shop idea, where it's like not technical. They just want to do something with their hands. So
What's the most famous person that came to your coffee shop?
We hit Julia Roberts in last week.
Oh,
Yeah, very exciting.
And Vitalik's coming soon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we hosted an event with Vitalik. Origin did.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago in San Francisco.
Yeah, at this place called The Modernist.
Yeah.
We had Vitalik and Jason Su, who's known as the crypto congressman from Taiwan. He's like a very young progressive congressman that's very pro-crypto, trying to bring that to Taiwan, and he's very close with Vitalik.
Yeah. So we got to ask him a bunch of questions and got to go to another foreign country.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant guy. That was super fun.
What's his name again?
Vitalik?
No,
Oh.
the other one.
Jason Su.
Oh.
Yeah, Jason
What's
Su.
Vitalik?
So John, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is John. I work on business development and business operations at Origin. Prior to Origin, which I joined in January, I was in a totally unrelated space at a B2B SaaS company. I started as the first employee there and was there for 4 years. So, and worked at another startup before that as well. So mostly just brought startup experience professionally to the table, but I had quite a bit of personal interest growing in blockchain and more recently in Ethereum specifically. I think because my background was B2B, it just was a little bit easier for me to grasp the use and the value of Ethereum. I wish I had grasped the use and value of Bitcoin a little bit earlier, but yeah, it's been a really fun ride, and we have built literally a world-class team, so I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, let's go through that. Josh Frazier is one of the founders. He's founded a couple startups, 3 venture-backed startups. Matthew Liu is
25th employee at YouTube,
Yeah.
3rd PM there.
and then worked at Google for a while. And then just the whole team is kind of startup folks. So we meet a lot of projects and it's kind of like, let's do an ICO quickly. And our project's much different. That we're really building real technology. We have Upan on our team. Upan's one of the PayPal founders, one of the original 6 with Peter Thiel and that
Max
gang.
Levchin, yeah. And then he went on to be the first employee at YouTube, which is where he worked with Matt, our co-founder. We've also since hired 2 other engineers, very similar, early PayPal, early YouTube, who went to Dropbox afterwards. So one thing that's interesting, which you brought up, is that our team all basically comes from non-crypto backgrounds. They weren't like Solidity experts that wanted to start Origin. Like Upan, for example, took a good month or 2 to learn the technology, to get the local environment set up on his laptop, hack around, figure out the space. And we think that it's really good to see these pioneers who built Web 2.0 coming on to build Web 3.0.
So we'll get into the team a little bit more later.
Sure.
But right now let's just define Origin. And it's really funny defining a company because I'm in Colorado, he's in San Francisco. I work with community, he works with biz dev. So I think we actually have different definitions of what we do.
Sure.
So do you want to go first or should I?
You go first.
All right. So Origin is a series of protocols that we're building that helps emulate sharing economy. Sites, we want to see mass adoption of crypto, and one of the biggest ways to do that is things like home sharing, ride sharing, and food delivery. So things where you've got a person with an asset, we want to do a transfer, we need identity, we need a way to see it on a website, to search, to book it, and to actually make sure the transaction went through. So it's a series of protocols though. So we have, we're the first project to do ERC 725, which is identity on blockchain. And that is, we're actually launching the ERC 725 Alliance tomorrow in Berlin with 50 or so, I'm not sure what that final number, it might be up to 60 now, partner companies. So we'll have a series of protocols that all companies can use. We're 100% open source. So feel free to get on our GitHub and pull some code. What's your definition?
Yeah, so
Probably different.
I would say that we are a platform, a blockchain platform. Really, the idea is to allow more developers to build these decentralized peer-to-peer marketplaces, truly peer-to-peer, which is really an important part because a lot of people hear peer-to-peer, Airbnb, Uber are usually described as peer-to-peer, but there's actually a giant corporate company in the middle collecting your data, siloing it, and monetizing it. Initially, it's actually helpful. These centralized companies have done a ton. They've changed the way people transact, and it's beneficial to the consumers in the short term. But in the long term, it becomes very dangerous because they can start to extract higher and higher fees. They can start to censor and regulate. They're a single point of failure that is very susceptible to unnecessary regulation. So, at the very foundation, we are a set of protocols. And we're building a JavaScript library on top of these protocols so that many more developers, most developers don't know Solidity, almost all of them know JavaScript. So if we can put the power of JavaScript in their hands, a few JavaScript calls, and they can create one of these marketplaces, we think that that's going to create a situation where we can get some real mass adoption in the long term. And then on top of all of this, we've actually built our own application on top of our platform. So in its current state, it's basically a meta marketplace where you can post listings to, buy and sell goods and services, and it will also aggregate goods and services from all of our partner marketplaces as well.
It's funny how they're different, but they're the same. So we're building a protocol. How much do we charge? Absolutely zero, which is kind of nice. So we do have a token, but if you want to implement it, it's free for the users. So our end-all business model is going to be implementing and helping people adopt the technology. We really believe in the long game of crypto, and so we could easily build this and say it's just 2%, and just you take 5%, we'll take 2%, and then we've got a great business model. But I think there's a much bigger thing that we're working on in the crypto space by taking zero. So we can launch this, and then our upkeep fees are next to zero. So why don't we just pass that on and realize that we can do.
Yeah, I would add that, I think cutting out the middleman is usually what people say as far as a really good application of the blockchain. And to some degree, I agree. But I think more realistically, what we're going to see is a shift of what the middleman is actually delivering and what they're getting in return. So as these big monopolies get bigger and bigger, they can collect these higher and higher fees. But what are these fees really for, right? For the most part, it's for matchmaking. They find a buyer and a seller, and they make that match, and predominantly that's what their fees come from. So if you can eliminate the middleman and eliminate that matchmaking fee, it's not to say that there won't be other ways to add value to the transaction. There's all sorts of needs for these marketplaces, dispute resolution and insurance and all of these things, so there will be opportunities to make money, but if we can cut out those fees, you cut out quite a bit of the leverage that these middlemen have today.
So that's what we're building. I often view it as SMTP is for email, and what we're doing is for kind of sharing economy. We're the protocol layer. You probably will not go to originprotocol.com to book a house, although you can. We're partnering with 50, right now 50, how many partner companies do we have in the?
Chase
is one. Chase. Just one. Okay, and how many of our investors are in the room as well? Yeah, back row, I like that. Partners up front, investors in the back. So that's the broader overview of what we're doing. We have mainnet launch coming up, which is very exciting. Do we have a publicly announced date for that?
Not a specific date, but we're shooting basically for the beginning of October.
So I don't think that's on our website. We, for a while, said Q3 launch. And I love crypto projects that say Q3 launch, and then like the first week in Q4 they launch. All right, we're going to follow that standard. So it was really exciting working on that. We have a really interesting tech team in that we have Yupan, he was a guy at YouTube that just implemented he describes his development style as lighting stuff on fire. Like he'll go in, get stuff working really well, and then he's got 2 former teammates at YouTube at Origin that kind of clean up and make it production ready. So in 1 week, he was able to get messaging working, auditable, decentralized messaging, which everybody on the demo call was just kind of jaw on the floor. So we do, everything's open. So all of our communications on Discord and Telegram. You can attend our weekly engineering calls, which I highly recommend you attend just to watch UPenn.
Yeah, he's a character, for sure.
He's amazing. It's really fun watching him. But he just, was like, I was thinking about doing this and like, there's a problem with gas and messaging and audibility and, I think I've solved that in a week. And nobody's really done that. So everybody's kind of looking around like, all right, what's the catch here?
Yeah.
And so far we haven't found one. So we'll see how that's used and such. But we have messaging working, identity working, listings, IPFS, and you can check it out, demo.originprotocol.com. And you don't have to use MetaMask on mobile. So that's also like one of those. I wish we were like a really good promotion company, because I feel like every one of those statements is like, holy shit. Although it looks really simple, and that's tough with blockchain, is it's like, we got messaging working, and everybody's like, that's pretty much web development 101, right? But it's like, no, there's actually some really cool things here, like it's decentralized, it's auditable, it's
encrypted,
it's open,
yeah.
it's encrypted, and you can't shut it down, theoretically. So that's where we're at right now, where we're going. So in a year, where do you think Origin is?
Well, where I hope Origin is at least a good amount of partners that are not just haven't just built on top of Origin, but are actually acquiring users and transacting through the network. There's all sorts of friction when it comes to getting a regular user to interact with a decentralized application. Most people don't know anything about private keys. Most people, even if they do know about them, aren't very comfortable when it comes to, every time you send money to an ETH address, you like check it 1,000 times, and you're just so worried. Even if you're 100% sure, you're just like, I hope it got there. I don't know. So
We all know the feeling.
yeah, there's a lot of friction. So I think we're all very realistic at Origin about, it's not going to be decentralized Uber this year or anything like that. But we think we can build up to it in stages. So,
I met with Danielle Morel, who's Mattermark. I'm not sure if Mattermark was a massive thing in the UK, but like a really good, solid company. Kind of the company was kind of a darling in Silicon Valley, in that it was a newsletter that everybody read, and then it was financial tools about every other company in the valley. And so everybody kind of was checking their Mattermark score and such. And I gave her the pitch for Origin, and she's like, I should start 30 double-sided marketplaces, and the one that takes off will make me more money than I've ever made in my life. And I was like, oh, yes, that's actually a good way to look at it.
yeah.
Double-sided marketplaces are super tough, as you know. Everybody's been the Craigslist killer for the last 15 years, and not many people have been able to actually implement that. I'm really excited with Origin as far as, I think we're going to make it WordPress-like, and that people can run their own stack and run their own company. With Startup Weekend, my mission for 10 years was making sure that people knew entrepreneurship was accessible. And now I'm talking to Uber drivers. I'm like, sweet, what's your most profitable route? Right? In Colorado, it's the airport run. If they do 4 airport runs a day, they've made more money than 30 short rides or 40 short rides. And so if I was an Uber driver in my area, I would just set it up so I only accept crypto. I'm going to get 100% of that transaction fee. I'm not going to pay Uber 30 to 80%. We're seeing 80% right now as the high for what Uber's taking from drivers.
How much?
80%.
Yeah, there's some really bizarre edge cases where like drivers will in some cases even lose money, like after you take gas into consideration and all of these things, and it's very scary for sure.
So I see drivers building their own, they give you an Uber ride and say, hey, next time you want to ride to the airport, let me know. Book directly with me, use crypto or use fiat, and I only have to do 2 of those routes, and I'm going to make more than I do right now. So let's make entrepreneurs smarter and more profitable, and let people actually run their own destiny.
Yeah.
So that's where I see it. Hopefully we'll see one metric that I really want to see, which is 1 million users. I'm really excited for that to ramp up, and that might be a little cheap stat because ERC 725, I think it will be a very broadly used spec on how do you verify your identity on chain.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned, just that's worth touching on, I think, is that two-sided marketplaces are very difficult to jumpstart. There's usually a very serious liquidity problem where you either have to jumpstart the buyers or the sellers to get the other side of the transaction interested. But one very interesting part of what we're doing is when you have, let's say I sign up for Origin for a home sharing marketplace. I can build a reputation and I can build an identity that can then be used for other Origin-powered marketplaces. So instead of going to the decentralized car sharing application with no reputation or anything to go with, I actually have something to start with. And for the car sharing application, it actually makes user acquisition much easier because you're not starting from scratch and you already basically have a pool of users to draw from. So I think that dynamic is going to hopefully create opportunities for these two-sided marketplaces that would be much more difficult to jumpstart. Other similar examples would be something that maybe isn't very profitable, especially in a venture-backed world that we live in, where they need these huge billion-dollar companies. A lot of companies aren't getting started because they're not ever going to be a massive billion-dollar company, but it doesn't mean they can't add value to their community, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe I want to borrow power tools from my neighbor, and it's really hard to build a huge company out of that, but you can, especially when you're removing the fees, you can create these communities, these sharing communities that maybe wouldn't have existed without blockchain.
And you're getting token. And theoretically, tokens go up, right? Yeah. Not in today's market. But if you've got somebody that really believes in the platform, I've got a couple of friends doing kind of work on different platforms, and they're kind of holding some of their money, and they're like becoming day one investors, right? The first Uber drivers got $20. The first Uber investors are billionaires, right? And the drivers took the risk. They took the biggest risk, right? They did the work. And I think that we need to have, in the States especially, we need to have a serious conversation about the value of work.
Yeah.
That's us for now. I want to make sure we involve you guys and answer some questions and take us in some directions that we didn't want to go. And we're super happy with any questions you want to do it. Anybody want to kick off? We'll go 2 questions in the back, then we'll come up here.
Please explain the ERC 725. How you do it.
Explain it? Yeah, sure. So ERC 725 is an identity standard on Ethereum. It was proposed by this guy named Fabian Vogelsteller, who was the creator of the ERC 20 token standard, which is what basically all tokens are based off of for the most part. The idea is that it's a smart contract, and it has your Ethereum wallet address, and you can post claims and attestations to this smart contract address. So you can say, my name is John, that's a claim. There's not necessarily a way to prove that, but that's something I'm claiming. And then you can also do things like, I own this phone number, this email address, this Twitter account, this Facebook account, or in a home sharing setting, I own this actual house, right? We can send them a postcard with a code on it, and they give us the code, and we know that they at least have access to the mailbox. So with this smart contract, again, it's portable and you own this data, right? So not only will you be able to use it within the context of Origin and Origin-powered marketplaces, but any other projects that are adopting this standard, you'll be, in theory, be able to take this identity and use it across. So for the way we went about it, in order to do these attestations to prove that you own a Twitter account or Facebook account, we actually had to set up a server, which for us, we tried to avoid at all costs because we want everything to be as decentralized as possible. But in order to do these attestations and to keep everything on chain, we had to set up this server, but we did it open source, and we made it plug and play essentially. So if you don't want to use our attestation server, you don't trust it, or you have another one that you trust more, or whatever the case may be, you're more than welcome to use these. So that's philosophically how we try to approach these problems.
And if you want to see it live in action, demo.originprotocol.com, and you can you can verify.
Can I delete my data?
Yeah, it all works.
Can I delete my data?
So, no. As of right now, that's one interesting part of the blockchain, is that it's immutable. But we have partnered with a company called NewCipher, for example, that provides a key management system that will allow you to have control over who sees your data and when. So if I'm renting out my house, I don't want everybody to know what my address is, but when somebody books it, I want them to be able to see my address in that circumstance.
Is that using a form of zero knowledge proofs or?
So they use proxy re-encryption is the technique that they use. So they actually had a whole existing business before they started to get into the blockchain space. So they should be launching, I think, in the next few months. But but that's the idea.
It's a really interesting question, though.
It's a great question for sure, and these are the types of things that not a lot of people even are aware, right? And that's a big challenge for us is when we're designing these applications, especially our DApp. We need to make sure that when they're signing a MetaMask transaction or whatever they're doing, that they understand, hey, you're putting this data somewhere that people can see. You have to kind of explain and hold their hands through these processes. So, good question.
And then there's this portability of that identity, which is really cool, but then there's also the privacy of that. Where it's like, I don't want everybody to know that I went to this concert.
Sure.
That I'm renting my house to, right? Like there's a certain layer of protection that you want to have. So you go up here for next question.
Yeah, and I was just wondering how you kind of see this statement, the sharing economy without intermediaries.
I got a good answer.
Based on the fact that you have developers building on the protocol. So my understanding or assumption would be you're trying to promote competition within the marketplace to ensure that you don't have one Uber.
This
Absolutely.
is my favorite question because
Yeah, I'm sure
to
you've had it a
restate
lot.
the question, we're building tools for intermediaries by saying without intermediaries.
Yeah. So first things first, we will be updating these banners because I agree completely that the messaging is a little bit confusing, and especially for our partners. It's not really a good first impression where you're like, hey, we want to cut out middlemen, we want to get rid of the intermediaries. And that's why I was saying earlier, I think it's more a shift of what these middlemen will look like and how they will act. So the new tagline is blockchain platform for decentralized marketplaces.
Okay.
But a fair question. And I think, what do these intermediaries look like? What services are they providing? How are they getting paid? And is it worth it? And that's really what we're trying to change.
So it's a more competitive marketplace for a smaller kind of startup, so to speak, as opposed to, is that one way to see it?
We're seeing companies big and small very interested in it. We don't, this is a protocol, right? We aren't in control of who uses it and who doesn't. It's really supposed to be permissionless. So we don't want to pick any winners, and we certainly don't think we can. So we want any and all ride sharing, home sharing, et cetera, companies to be building on Origin, certainly.
And the price point would be set by, you wouldn't have any intermediation on the price point. It
No.
would just be set
So-
by market dynamics and quality of the service.
We are okay with our marketplace partners. They are allowed to charge a fee if they'd like. There may be certain scenarios where it makes a lot of sense, and if somebody's happy to pay it, we don't want to necessarily remove that completely. We won't have the fee on the protocol layer, and we certainly encourage 0% transaction fees.
Yeah, and we'll come to you to that. Like it's not 0%. It's as close to zero as possible. That's our ethos. So there's gas prices and
Yeah, that's
hard
good.
costs of running a business. You've got to be real about that. I'd rather see a company that lasts 10 years than 1 year and be like super idealist about it. But you want to talk about our partnership? And
No, basically, I'm from Chaser, founder. We partnered with Origin because the situation scenario, we wasn't going more towards a decentralized route, but spoke to Josh there and he really pushed us towards it. The key things these guys mentioned is like, if you take, for example, Uber, they're very centralized. All the money goes to the shareholders, and it's just like one big pyramid scheme. So what Origin allows us to do is distribute the value more fairly, so then we can give the money to the actual users and the drivers. And the key thing is the drivers do all the work, then get everything. With regards to fees, we were looking at setting them at 15%. It doesn't seem like it seems like a lot, but it isn't in the marketplace. But what Origin Protocol allows us to do is to bring them right down. So we set the fees at so a minimalistic value that we just keeps us running in that sense and profitable. So that's the key thing, and we can grow the network on both sides. And we believe this is the only company in the industry that allows us to do that and what they're building. So it's a fantastic proposition for Chaser. So we're glad to be partnering with them at the moment.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and,
Appreciate that.
Also, in addition to that, we had a bit of internal debate because there's also another company that's partnering with them, Snagit, I think.
Snagit,
Snagit,
yeah.
and then there's us, but then we was like, okay, but we more than welcome it. We're not bothered. So, in terms of delivering value, we're like, you're happy to be on it. Either can put another 7 companies on there, as long as the driver wins and the actual consumer wins. That's the key thing.
Absolutely.
And that's what happens. You look at monopolies like Uber, like what they're going to do is ramp up the prices. You mentioned the huge fees, surge pricing. Origin Protocol allows us then to give more control to the drivers, so they can even throw out prices and say, look, we'll do it for this much, that much, rather than companies setting the price due to demand and how they're going to be profitable out of it. So it is closest to decentralized as possible.
Yeah.
The last thing is like you need a certain amount of centralization. We need servers.
Sure.
We need to pay insurance costs. We need to keep it up and running. So that's why the small amount of fees exist. But the bigger companies at the moment, I used to come from a ride-sharing background. So I was at Get and Addison Lee. I don't know if you heard of them in London. You probably would do. So they're taking a lot of fees, and this protocol is fantastic. Allows us to compete in the marketplace.
Yeah.
I'm excited to use you guys next time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's one last question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just quickly,
please.
I'm being a bit annoying. I don't know if you saw how Grab and Uber worked out in Asia. I've been living in the Philippines for the last 4 years, and I was just wondering how you see kind of the tipping point. So everybody basically moved away from Uber to Grab because basically Uber got shut down for a bit. But what I'm trying to say is that with a lot of these services, you do need to reach a certain tipping point for people to start using them.
Yeah.
So you need some degree of monopolization and scale. So I was just wondering how that fits with the competition and price point.
I got this one, I think.
Yeah.
So
Does
there's
that make sense?
2 answers to that. One is word protocol.
Yeah.
So we're going to support all these companies, and hopefully they can reach that tipping point. I'm not sure how.
Totally.
Right? Like, you're gonna, if you've ever signed up or done a transaction on blockchain, it's not super simple. So we have, our amazing dev team and then a designer who does phenomenal UI work, and that comes with the open source. So all our loading screens, explaining the process, showing, that's all open source and free to use. So hopefully we can get people on board, and the first time they use it, they become a passionate user of it, which is how 90% of startups kind of hope that they launch and whatever. The second one, I'm halfway through this blog post, and I'm writing about the 7 camps of crypto. So I've identified the 7 different groups that I see in cryptocurrency and how they get along and how they don't. Because you've got people that are currency manipulators, like they're investors, they're speculators, they're stock exchange folks that are looking for something more exciting and fluid. You've got anarchists, you've got technologists. I think we're in the technology camp. Although you've got the libertarians, you've got, and I'm not quite finished with exactly how this Venn diagram fits together, but you have 2 groups, like the traders and the anarchists don't quite see eye to eye on most things, right? You've got the decentralized camp, right, where they think 1% centralization is censorship, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And whatever 1% that is, and however reasonable that is to everybody that ever touches your product, if you censor one thing, you're done as a project. So how do we get everybody to get along and kind of realize that the global mission is bigger than the one sticking point that you have in those camps? So how do we get people to really adopt? I think home sharing is going to be the first one to go. It's a slow moving target. Like my calendar, you've got 365 days you can book. And that's, and most of it happens a couple months ahead of time. Where Uber, much more difficult of a problem, where I need that now and I need that car to be contacted and go down the street and be 5 minutes away. But once you have people that I use this for Airbnb, I use this for my vacation, the host got paid 30% more, I feel better about that, and now I'm gonna try to do that for another company or product.
Yeah, and I would add, think about places that Uber doesn't exist and cannot exist because it's been banned or whatever reason there is. These could be a lot of the markets that actually adopt these decentralized applications first. Places that, there's billions of people that don't have credit cards, they don't have bank accounts, so they can't use Uber, they can't use Airbnb, they can't use eBay. And what they do have, however, is a cheap smartphone, which will eventually have a crypto wallet on it. And if you look at, especially in Asia, they've already pretty much largely stopped using cash and even credit cards day to day. There's some places that only accept payment through WeChat, And so the leap from where they are today to a crypto wallet is really pretty minimal. So I think those are pretty big drivers for that.
And you're going to see adoption in super rural areas where there's just no business sense for there to be drivers and customer support, and then areas where the governments have tried banning.
Yeah.
So direct one-to-one commerce on a decentralized platform. Interesting story. Yeah. Do you have any other questions? No. Yeah, we'll go here and then we'll come back. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to know more about the token utility and why you can't use ETH.
You can use ETH. So
the question is token utility. Why do we have
yeah,
our own token?
why the token?
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't need to use the Origin token to actually transact. Many of our partners may have their own token, and will probably want that to be the way that value is transferred. So we think ETH is probably actually going to be first. We also think that a stable coin is going to be a very important part to this puzzle and to these ecosystems. The uses of the token are twofold. In the longer term, it's going to be governance-related decisions like, inflation, or should we make a major technology shift, all of these things a little bit further down the road. In the short term, it's incentives. So on the positive side, you refer a buyer or seller to the network, we'll give you a referral in Origin tokens. If you want to transact or even leave a review, these things cost gas, and most people don't want to pay to leave a review, so we're going to not only cover that gas cost in our Origin token, but also probably, especially in the short term, incentivize people to do so, so that we can facilitate the health and the growth of the network. And then on the negative side, in order to list on Origin, you'll need to place a deposit. You'll basically have to stake some tokens that will range, smaller items will probably have smaller deposits, and that way, if somebody flags it and says, hey, this is spam or this is fraud, then you may lose your tokens in that process.
Because I don't know if you've heard about this, but cryptocurrency, there's some scammers out there.
Oh.
So when we launch, our contracts need to take into account, we need to think about the scam issues.
Yeah.
And how do we get ahead of that and say, well, this listing marketplace is actually pretty pure. You can trust it.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you have concerns with the approach there that find the actual provision of services there may be more competition, say, if you're using for your ride sharing or whatever, or maybe you're going directly to the individual. But around those issues, and some of those issues you've brought up around dispute resolution, insurance, and so forth, there's an opportunity here for an Uber equivalent to step in around the level of identity services or something like that. So you say someone inserts themselves in the middle as our company is providing the verification around identity, which everyone is accepting, is giving everyone that degree of trust in what they're then doing. That there's other opportunities for people to insert themselves in different parts and scale to that kind of level and have that dominant role. And then is that something you're actively anticipating? Is it something you're not worried about because of the way you set up the protocol? And then also, are you looking at manipulating what happens on the protocol by the use of those rewards and how those rewards work and so forth?
Have we thought about some of these bigger players coming into the space?
No, it's not say the bigger players coming in, but there's, say you're encouraging the exchanges where perhaps they're at a much smaller level, so it's a one-to-one or it's at a local level, but then people want some degree of trust, and then someone stepping in and providing, we provide definitive sort of identity, but that might not work in your group, but it might be something that they're doing within that, or we're providing a sort of escrow service there.
Yeah, so the way we look at this is we want to provide smart defaults for a lot of these problems, right? Okay. So escrow, identity, reputation, dispute resolution, insurance, we will have a smart default that we will use in our application that our partners are able to use, but they may have more specific needs, right? They may want to plug in their own smart contracts for some of these things. And we also will work with some trusted third parties. I mentioned NewCipher, anybody that's providing technology to our marketplace partners, which we will vet definitely very strictly. They'll be able to use these as well. So it's very much up to the marketplace partners to make these kinds of decisions. What do they need to allow their users to trust them and to trust Origin. But one of the great things about these protocols and about Origin and about the way we're doing it open source is there's nothing hidden. You can really see what's happening, and it's up to you to do what you want with it.
One thing I'll add on to that is there's massive holes in what we're doing. Like there's no way for myself as a US based consumer to swipe a credit card and book a hotel or an Airbnb on Origin.
Right.
So somebody's gonna build that.
Yeah.
I don't know who yet. Cody, you guys gonna do it? But somebody's gonna do that. And we're gonna support whoever does that. That's not what we believe. That's not our core. That's not what we believe in. We believe in that, but
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want to see that.
yeah. I want to see my mom be able to use this and really love it. I always hate that. I ran a company called Venture Capital Wear, which was T-shirts for VCs. They're $100 each, and our best-selling shirt was "Your mom is not a valid test market," because we're just that's a big joke as far as startup pitches. I don't think. I haven't heard it recently, but I just caught myself doing it, so I have to make fun of myself for that. So. But we want to see mass adoption. So there's certain parts of it that we don't have covered, and some of those we know, and some of those we're going to figure out.
And I think you bring up a pretty interesting point in that I think a lot of the future will be these localized communities, these localized networks, rather than Uber taking over the world. It will be something smaller that really understands the community, understands the people. We actually have a partner called Kozaza. I think they rebranded recently to WeHome, but essentially it's an Airbnb style type of network. They already have tons and tons of users in their centralized platform, and what their niche is very traditional Korean homes, and it's meant for people that really want to experience the Korean culture and stay with a Korean like person or people. And one of the most interesting value propositions that we provided to them was zero fees, because they're very much a mission-driven company, and if they can cut out 20% of the cost to their users, they're definitely going to do it. So this is a really good example of one of these localized. Their goal isn't to go spread out all over the world. They just want to do what they're doing really well in Korea. So I think for us, it's important that we are able to support them and offer them the services, the insurance, identity, et cetera, that we have come to expect as users after using an Airbnb or an Uber. We need to provide a similar level of an experience. And in general, people aren't going to use an application just because it's decentralized. They're going to use it because it's at least as good as Airbnb or Uber, and it's cheaper. It's going to take quite a bit for them to actually make the leap.
Or you're in this room and you just really want to see this exist. Yeah.
So going back to your local solutions use case for the Origin protocol, does the protocol allow for the aggregation of these localized communities through one portal? Like you have your Korea place, you have your Japan, all these different housing markets that are distinct but doing the same thing. Does the protocol allow for you to create one portal that aggregates data from all of those multiple communities?
So our application, at the application layer, yes, it's all on the blockchain. One partner could potentially see and show listings of another partner, but it really comes down to fulfillment, right? So one partner can't necessarily guarantee that the other partner is going to fulfill that transaction, but as far as being able to see the listing, it's out there, it's in public. So we will be aggregating all of our different partners' listings onto our application, but when it comes to actually fulfilling it, it's going to be up to the partner to actually do that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I have a second question.
Sure.
So as someone who contributed to the token sale, the zero fees thing is concerning. What are the plans to return value to the people who are your earliest supporters?
Sure. I would say we're commonly asked, how are you going to make money, right? We're an open source project. The one short, simple, and very common answer is the token economic model, right? As utility goes up, as use goes up, as demand goes up for the token, then in theory, the price should go up as well. But we are, number one, very conservative, and number two, we want to follow the path of other companies that have already been successful with similar models. So there are many examples of open source companies that have monetized, and we see, these paths that have already been trailblazed as a really good option to monetize. So when we're dealing with, a marketplace partner that wants extra consulting help on what's the best way to implement this, or we want an additional level of support, or we want you guys to collaborate with us on these custom features, there's all sorts of ways to monetize these open source projects.
Like the Red Hat model.
Exactly.
Or Pivotal Labs.
Yeah.
So we've got time for 2 more questions, and I think we're gonna.
Are all the transactions going to happen, sorry,
No, we'll go you, and then we'll go back there.
on the Ethereum network? Because it takes a long time to confirm a transaction. And
Yeah.
if you just want to call the Uber, you're not going to wait for
Yeah.
this long
So-
for it to confirm.
So we've focused a lot on speed, and so anything that needs to be on chain is on chain, and everything that we can take off chain is off chain. So to speed that up. So yes, and our size is actually quite small.
Yeah, I would say that, like I mentioned, you're not going to book a decentralized Uber today. There are many limitations to the Ethereum blockchain right now when it comes to scaling and when it comes to transaction times and that sort of thing. We have taken a bet on the Ethereum developer community. We think there are a lot of very, very smart people working on many different approaches to solve these scaling issues. We're very close with the Omisigo team, and they're rolling out Plasma pretty soon. So as of right now, we've taken the bet on Ethereum, but it's not to say that if there's another blockchain that comes out next year and it's awesome and it works and it actually has a mainnet,
And it's decentralized?
yeah, that we're more than happy to make whatever shift we need to make. We're a startup, we need to be agile, and we're abstracting things in a way such that this JavaScript library currently is pointing to some Ethereum smart contracts, but it's not to say that it couldn't point to other smart contracts in the future.
And we're making decision after decision based on what's good for the long-term success of the company.
Yeah.
So, back?
If you guys end up consulting and helping people build on top of your protocol and charging them, how do the token holders actually get anything out of that?
So, to be totally frank, a lot of this stuff isn't anything we've very specifically gotten into the details on. At the end of the day, we are in it for the long term as founders and employees. Everybody's on 4-year vesting schedules. Like, you see a lot of these crypto projects pop up, there's no vesting and no lockups. We are very much committed to the long term, and we have a very huge network of investors that all have very high expectations of us. So, we're not your traditional crypto company. We're basically a Silicon Valley startup that is using this new token model and this blockchain platform. So it's really hard to go too deep into the details, but these are just some of the ideas we've thought as far as monetization.
We're pre-launch, so we think we know what our business plan is, and if you've been a part of a startup, that changes. We've got to figure out what works best for the community. We've got to align goals. I love crypto in that it feels like we've had our acquisition day one. And instead of the acquisition forcing the founders out and the community profit to be the number one goal and the community be the last thing, we have our founders in charge. Our community is our number one goal. And we have enough cash to try out a couple models to make sure we can go through and build a sustainable project. Yeah. Do you have a final question? No question. Anybody else?
Is most of your partners they're outside the U.S. or in the U.S.?
That's a good question. It's honestly, if I had to guess, it's probably around 50-50. It's very much, we have them all over the world. We have them in Europe, in Asia. Asia is a very important community to us because most of the trading volume happens in Asia. Like I mentioned, they're very close to already being comfortable with these types of interactions. So it's very important to us. But we are, we're here for a reason. We're here in London for a reason. And the European market's very important to us, the US is, and Asia is as well.
Yeah, this is our second time to London as well.
Yeah.
I was here during the Beast from the East, the big snowstorm.
Okay.
And we did an event here, and I think 12 people showed up, and it was quite fun because everybody was very, very cold. One final question, and then I'll end with a challenge. Yeah.
More than 90% of projects will die over a period of time. There are so many projects coming in sharing economy. What makes unique about Origin protocol that will survive next 5 years down the line and all competition?
I mean, the competition's going to be fierce, you know. One of the things when I joined Origin that hit me maybe after a few weeks was realizing that like if this works, we're going to be pissing off some really big companies with a lot of money and a lot of lawyers, and it was a little bit scary, right? So, you know, I'm appreciative of these competitors that have introduced the sharing economy to us as consumers. I think it's really important, all of the work that they've done, and I don't want to take that away from them at all. But I think it's becoming more clear every day that they're taking advantage of their positions, and they're, you know, even if it's not malignant, like the fact that they are a single point of failure, they have all this data, it makes them a honeypot, you know, it makes them attractive to hackers, it makes them susceptible to, you know, regulators coming in and enforcing fines and stuff. So there's a lot of work. We are very much playing the horizontal, taking the horizontal route, right? We're not picking home sharing, we're not picking car sharing. Who knows what what takes off first or what becomes big on Origin. It may not be home sharing or car sharing. It's really hard for us to say. We're not prepared to make those bets, but we see the power of building this technology because it fundamentally will change the way people transact with each other, and I think that mission is the most important thing.
Let me build on John's answer here. You've got our dev team for free, right? That if you're going to start a newspaper, you're going to use WordPress, right? You're not going to hire a tech team and build out some massive thing. You're going to iterate immediately on day one with a story and really build that out. So you're going to be able to do the same things. We're going to talk about booking on blockchain. Use our tech for 0% commission, which is not awesome for our token holders in the room, but also like global adoption is going to be awesome for the token holders in the room.
Yeah, the idea is that why should every marketplace have to rebuild escrow and listings and identity and reputation when they're common to all these marketplaces? They should instead be focusing on what is core to their community, to their network, bringing on their users on board, et cetera. So I think that will change things a little bit.
Awesome. So we're going to stay to network. I've got one challenge for you all, and I always like ending a talk with a challenge. We have some gifts for you and t-shirts and pop sockets. Do you guys know pop sockets? They're little things for your phone that do that.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So we got those for you, just to say thanks for coming here. So my challenge is to get us involved with what you're doing and let us help out. If you've got something with your project that you need help connecting with somebody else in the industry, let us know. So that's my challenge for you. We are only going to succeed as an industry. I don't think that there's a partner in the industry that's going to succeed and other people are not. I think we all succeed or we all don't. So let's make sure that we all kind of build that community ethos right into every event that we have and every chance we have to work together.
Yeah, and keep asking these questions. You know, the hard questions are important. We, as a company, are as open and as transparent as we possibly can be. And we're not here to lie to you or to sell you on something that we can't deliver.
Come on, it's called shilling.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of unanswered questions. There are a ton of challenges, every layer of the stack essentially, and we're not pretending to know the answers to all of these things. We just know that we have a kick-ass team, a kick-ass community, and over the long term, we think those things will really add up.
Yep. So to get involved with Origin beyond today, I've got cards. I'm just Andrew at originprotocol.com. Email me for anything. On Telegram, we're just Origin Protocol. Discord is where you can find a lot of the Meteor engineering call information. We do Wednesdays. We have an engineering call. If you're technical, how many technical folks do we have in the room? A couple of you. So generally introverts asking that question. I highly recommend joining the engineering call and just looking at it for a week. We talk about our planning process. We talk about what demos are coming up. You get to see UPan light stuff on fire.
Yeah.
It's all quite entertaining. But if you're technical and you want to see how kind of a Silicon Valley project is looking at how do we iterate, how do we work together as a team, how do we involve open source contributors from around the world, we want to teach you, and we want to kind of put the best practices that we think we found in your hands.
Cool.
Well, thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
What time do we need to be out?
9.
Yeah, and we've got the venue for a little bit longer, so if you want to grab a drink, we'll be around to network
Yeah,
and
I
chat.
think we got a
Thank
good
you guys so
30
much.
minutes.
This is super, super
Oh my
interesting.
God, that was really great. I went to so many meetups.